Hey, what is up, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you liking and subscribing and doing all that fun stuff. It always helps and goes a long way. So appreciate that. Hey, I bring a special guest on today. He's actually my brother-in-law. His name is Kevin Franson, and he helps run Franson Civil Engineers. They are a water resources engineering firm. They have 2 offices located here in Utah, and I wanted to pick his brain about what it's like to actually run a civil engineering business and really get his experience. And maybe if you have ever wondered what it's like to run a business, what stages of maybe running a business might be, whether it's you being a solo engineer or running an office or, growing it even more than that. So there's lots of ways you can go with that. But Kevin really dives into the details of what it's like to run a civil engineering office. And so I wanted to kind of get that out and see what it's all about. So I think it's really fascinating episode. There's tips in here on the interview process and things that can help your career as well, and how to run a business too. So it's all good stuff. Anyway, without further ado, I will shut up. Let me get to my interview with Kevin. I also have my brother Mark with me. He comes in about halfway because he wanted to join. So you'll see that as well. And it's always a good time. So without further ado, let me get to my interview with Kevin. It's coming up right after this. All right, we're rocking and rolling. Kevin, thanks for joining me on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. Appreciate you jumping on and doing this with me.
You bet. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. This is the first time we've actually connected to do a podcast, but maybe I can get you on a future episode too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, why don't you dive into a little bit about your background and maybe a quick overview of Franson Civil Engineers and your role in the company?
You bet. So I started at Franson Civil Engineers in 1990 when I was 16, and I would take out the garbage and mow the lawn. That was my first job there. So it's the firm that my father started in 1989, and I now am the general manager, CFO, take care of all of the business side of things. Throughout the years, I've held many hats at the firm. Like I said, I started off in what you might call maintenance or something along those lines, but I've been a CAD technician, worked with AutoCAD and PowerCAD, which is a Mac product way back in the day. Then I moved into the front office and helped with accounting and invoicing, a lot of Excel work there. And then now, like I said, managing the firm from the C-suite level situation. We have 2 offices, one in American Fork and one in Logan, Utah, with about a dozen people in Logan and about 24 in American Fork. And so we focus on water resources, civil engineering in the Intermountain West with our Utah-based offices. There's always a need for water and infrastructure related to water. And so we've focused exclusively on that civil design for water over the years.
That's awesome. So kind of a family-owned business. It started with your father. As everybody at family, your immediate family worked there or not?
Yeah, I think everybody in the immediate family has had a time or two where they've worked there. Right now, we have 3 brothers who work there. 2 of us are owners. My brother Eric is the president of the company and in charge of the technical aspects and business development aspects of the engineering firm. Our oldest brother is an AutoCAD technician and has worked senior designer in AutoCAD for 30 or 40 years now, so has a lot of experience. So there are 2 owners who are Fransons, but there are currently 9 total owners, and the other 7 are not Fransons. They're other engineers, and so it has a little bit of a feel of a family business because my brother and I run what our dad started, but technically, we're a C-Corp with 9 owners, and we're just 2 of them. We own together about 45% of the company, so it's close to where we have the majority shares, but we don't. So we still have a board of directors, and we have shareholder votes to make sure we're following all the corporation rules and all that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to pick your brain a little bit because I think you bring a lot of experience, not only from leadership, but also from like company culture, HR, leadership, and also just maybe advice for other engineers that are looking to start a business or start a firm themselves. So maybe I'll hit a couple of those. I guess off the top of my head, though, what are some of the biggest challenges right now in running a business like this?
I think the biggest challenge today is HR staffing. It's having enough engineers. Um, the local schools, and we're fortunate. We have BYU and Utah State, the University of Utah, and even Utah Valley University has started an engineering program. And so we have 4 universities where lots of kids are going to school and coming out. But from a big picture standpoint, we're missing. Uh, there wasn't a lot of civil engineers coming out of school, I'd say in the 90s and even early 2000s. And so we have some senior people and we can find young people, but even the young people there's not a lot of civil engineering graduates. And so I would say the biggest challenge in today's environment for us is just finding enough civil engineers to do the work. There's lots of work to do. As I mentioned earlier, in the state of Utah, there's always a need to do water resources infrastructure. There's either a funny little joke that I always tell people, at least I think it's funny, but the people like to say it's not the average water year, and you'll understand this. An average is just a set of numbers that have been divided to give you a number. So there isn't an average amount of rainfall in the state of Utah. You're either going to get more or you're going to get less. And you have to deal with either case for your water resources. You either need to try and save it if you're in a drought or you're getting less, or you need to save it if you're getting too much because you want to keep it for that other time. And so rarely does the rainfall or the moisture in Utah ever meet average. It's always going to be above or below. That's what an average comes from. But so there's always things to do and lots of work, but the biggest challenge today would be trying to find staff to get the work done. Experienced staff that knows what they're doing.
Right. So maybe kind of that middle tier that someone's got experience can get going right off the bat, maybe
Yep.
with less hand holding.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They can manage themselves. They can manage a small project or two, or just a project or two on their own, and maybe even a few others. That mid level is really what I think we're lacking mostly.
Hmm. All right. Hey, Mark just joined us today. What's going on, Mark?
Hey guys, glad to be here. Just trying to join in the fun. Sounds like you guys were having fun without me.
We like you joining. So for those that don't know, Kevin is a brother-in-law. We're all related here, so this is going to be fun. But
Yeah.
we were just talking about a little bit about the business, Franson Civil Engineers, and we were talking a little bit about how do you ensure a company stays competitive in this civil engineering industry. And what are your thoughts there, Kevin?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for us is to, I guess, be aware of the market, and we do that by getting salary surveys and making sure we understand what the market is paying, and then making necessary adjustments. Over the history, we've had a couple times where we've had to make an adjustment across the board just to remain competitive from a salary standpoint. And then I think the other thing is to listen to your employees. If you're talking to them regularly and asking how they're doing, they will generally tell you, hey, I'm looking, or I've this person has reached out, and occasionally you'll lose someone and you'll find out, oh, they're going here for this price or for this salary or benefit, and you might have to react after the fact occasionally with a person or two. But for the most part, we try and stay ahead by staying on top of those surveys and just kind of being aware of the market.
That makes sense. So I'm curious, you're working in HR. If you're interviewing quite a few people, what kind of qualities are you particularly looking for as you're running a civil engineering firm?
That's a great question. And this is being refined as we go along. That's why I think it's a great question, because I think initially when I was younger in my career and we would have interviews, you were kind of looking for maybe technical experience, what somebody had done in college as it related to project experience or where they'd worked. But as we have advanced in the I'd say last 5 years for sure, it has a lot to do with looking for critical thinking, the ability to see a problem, do some analysis, sift through the information, and be able to pick a path forward. And we have people who come out of school with great GPAs, as an example, and have what looks like wonderful training that way, but they may be a little focused on academics or homework and not what we use the term the real world. Particularly, we do a lot of agricultural work and design, and a young person who uh, can relate to an agricultural individual, a farmer, to go out and get some mud on their shoes and understand what they're trying to do and how their livelihood depends on this water. That critical thinking and kind of real world application becomes really important. So it's a challenge to try and interview for that. When you interview, you don't necessarily have the set of questions that's going to let you see it, but that's what we're trying to find when we do our interviews.
So you're looking for people that have real world experience, that not necessarily have a certain grade point average or the smartest kid in the class.
Right.
That probably, and I'm sure personality fit's probably a big piece of the puzzle there too. But
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you want them to fit into the group, and the two different offices, Logan and American Fork, have different personalities slightly. So that is a consideration for sure.
So, Kevin, do you find that those skill sets that you're looking for don't necessarily get identified at the interview time or during the interview process, that some of those things come to the surface as they work for you, and then you can kind of gauge whether, all right, I made a good decision by selecting that individual, or ooh, maybe I didn't do so well doing that, selecting that person.
Yeah.
Does that happen more than not, where you're really not figuring out if a person is a good fit until after they've worked for you for a little bit?
Yeah, it's I used the analogy the other day that it's a little bit like dating in this time, where it's just swipe right on people. You see a picture, you swipe right, you're on a date with them on one of these dating apps. But so yeah, I think we do sometimes make decisions quickly. If you have one interview, I think it's almost impossible to really understand and be able to make a fully educated decision. So I've been trying to increase that in our firm to say, I don't want to be dating on a dating app. I want to have 2 or 3 times to interact with somebody, because then I think you do start to get a sense of their ability to do that. One of our senior, he's the office manager up in Logan. He just went to a conference, and they talked about asking the question of a young engineer when they're looking at that first problem. What do you think the answer will be, without doing any hardcore math or any of the analysis or any of the engineering? Just what is your feeling about where this is going to go? And then have them compare that to what the answer is that they find when they're done with the design. And I think that does a couple of things. First of all, it helps the young person to develop and recognize maybe when they started off base or kind of out in left field. But it also could help us in our interviewing process to try and implement some of those kinds of questions to see how somebody processes information. I'll give you an example. My brother Eric, you both know him. He's a competitive soul, and he loves to just predict things. It's March Madness. This will probably get released after March Madness, but the basketball starts this week. So he loves to pick that kind of stuff. So a couple years ago, he said, let's predict the elevation of Lake Powell and the Great Salt Lake when it peaks this year. And he started it in about the same time, February and March. And we had one young engineer who predicted that the both bodies of water would be lower in June than they were today. And that gives you some basis, like to have a conversation. Why would you think they would be lower? As statistically speaking, and I think maybe never has the elevation of those bodies of water gone down between March and June, because that's your runoff season, right? All the water's got to come down out of the mountains. It doesn't matter if we had a bad winter of water. There's still water up there that's still going to come down. And so he in that case, he actually had a conversation with the engineer and said, where's your mind going? And was able to help him think through it. But that's the kind of question that could maybe show you in an interview process whether or not someone has a good practical sense of engineering, as opposed to just, I can do the math and solve the problems and I know how to do that stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's cool, because that's the, a lot of times in the industry that's called, good sound engineering judgment. And that's really what happens when you're formulating as a more of an experienced engineer, that sound and engineering judgment. It's from making those rational assessments like that without actually, maybe grinding through some calculations. But as an experienced engineer, you've kind of got the sense for what direction things are going to take. And so that's a smart way to get those newer engineers to start thinking in those terms. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I got another question related to the business. So you're hiring, you've got quite a few. How many employees do you have over there now?
I think I said the wrong numbers earlier. We have 11 in Logan and we have 16 in American Fork. I think I said 24, but that was the wrong number in American Fork. So that puts us at what, 27?
Okay. I'm just curious about company culture. How do you maintain a strong company culture? What does that look like over there? How do you, and is that something you try to work at?
For sure. I think it's important. It's critical to people being able to work together. And also, there's a phrase that gets tossed around a lot: work-life balance. And the irony of that is that I could say work-life balance. The three of us could give three answers, and I bet we'd have three different definitions of what a good work-life balance is. So I did a survey of our employees, and I said, what do you consider to be a good work-life balance? How does that look for you? And the reason that that's important is that as employees, we all have things that we want to do with our families, with friends, with people outside of work, activities that we want to do, hobbies that we have. And whatever level that is that we assign it with a good work-life balance, we need to be aware of our employees and their desire to have that. And so by asking them, what does it mean to you? It helps me as the general manager, as the HR, to then try and develop or keep programs or policies that help them feel that. So how do we do that? There's lots of ways. You can do it with, paid time off. You can do it with company events, which I think are huge for culture. In order to get to know people, you have to spend time with them. That's my belief in life. You are not going to become friends or close to somebody if you don't spend time with them. And so we try to have fun, obviously, when we can and appropriate as we're doing the work, but also we'll do things like have company dinners. We have a bowling tournament coming up in a month that we'll go bowling on for March Madness, and we have brackets, and we just take a lunch and pay for the lunch, pay for the time there, and it just allows people to be with each other outside of, sitting in the cubicle and working on those calculations or whatever the assignment is. So I think culture is important. I think you got to be aware of what your culture is, because if people don't feel part of the company or part of that culture, I can promise you they will leave. They don't feel committed to it, and they'll find somewhere else. Maybe they'll find it because there's more money somewhere else, or there's a different benefit. But if you have a good culture where people feel good together and feel like they have a commonality, then they will. I think it helps with longevity, reduces turnover, because people feel comfortable being there.
What about recognition, Kevin, as a means that it's not necessarily like monetary type recognition, but just I don't know. I don't know that your firm would have an employee of the month, type program or something like
Right.
that. But is there other types of recognition that helps the company culture?
For sure. That's an important part of it, I think. And there are lots of ways, like you just mentioned, that different people or different firms may go about it. What we do is we actually use a program. It's called Nectar. It allows us to give points to people as well as with a shout out to say, hey, thanks for helping with this, or thanks for doing that. And then there's these points that you give away, and you can spend those on swag or on gift cards or whatever. But the bigger part of it, to your point, Mark, is that when somebody has an employee anniversary, boom, there's an announcement that goes out in Nectar and says, hey, we're so grateful for this person. They've been here this many years. When their birthday comes, they get some points and it recognizes their birthday. And then the managers have most of the points to hand out. And that's really where it's important. Again, to your point, Mark, is that I can say, good job, Ben, good job, Kyler. I can say those things. And I think people come to kind of expect that from HR, or at least from me, because that's my nature and my personality. But it's more important that those technical engineers, their senior technical people, are saying, hey, thanks for doing that thing. Thanks for helping with this. And the system within Nectar helps to encourage them to give out the points and to give those shout outs. And without exception, the younger engineers always report back. That's huge. I love it. I want that feedback. I need that feedback, and it helps them to feel part of that connection with each other.
That's cool.
I got another question, I guess, dealing with company culture. And I think your definition and what you talked about is awesome. I heard a quote that company culture is how you feel going to work on Monday. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that is good. Good about that. It's very true.
But I'm curious, in running a business like this, how have you managed challenges, whether it's relationship problems, leadership conflicts, or even like team morale? How have you approached that and those challenges?
I would say that for us, one big part of that is Eric and his personality. He is a coach at heart. Like I said, he's competitive, but he's a coach who wants everybody to improve and get better. And so his demeanor, his approach as the technical lead within the firm is always about positivity and mentoring and helping people to feel like they can do better. If they need to do better, that they can. Occasionally you'll get, differences of opinion about how to solve a problem. And I'd say for the most part, that's worked out just through the nature of project teams, and you have a project manager, and that's the final say. And so there can be conversations where there can be debate. We subscribe to it's an old theory, don't get on the bus to Abilene, which I'll try to summarize by saying sometimes people don't want to go somewhere, but they'll go to that place because they can't avoid or they can't manage their agreement. They're in agreement, but they can't manage it. So they get on the bus, go somewhere they don't really want to go. But we really strive to avoid that, which means that when you have those conversations, when you're debating something, you all need to speak up. You need to say your mind. You need to say your piece. And then, like I said, the hierarchy of the project team will help to come to a final resolution. And I can't say that I'm aware of any personality or project team conflicts that have created long-term problems for us. We've had them; they happen, but Eric will usually sit down with the parties involved and just, hey, let's work through this. Let's communicate. and for the most part, they get moved on from a professional standpoint.
Perfect. Well, I want to just maybe ask a couple, maybe one or two questions while I got you about running a business, and especially advice for people that want to start a firm, I guess. But for those that are looking to start or even manage a civil engineering firm, what are some of the most important things that you can think of that they should know about as they're diving into that adventure?
All right, so I have an opinion on this one. Go figure. But engineers are not trained to be business people. They typically don't have business classes in their curriculum when they're at school getting their bachelor's. Now, some will go. I believe Mark has got his master's in business, and did you get a master's in business, Isaac, or no?
I got a master's, but not in business.
Not in business. Okay. So some will go and will get that business education from a university. So because they weren't trained generally to have that, then my opinion is that you need to be aware of the industry, organizations and associations that would help you to learn that side of it. So the American Council of Engineering Companies is designed to help engineers to run their business. And they understand it's an engineering business, so it's a great resource. And there are others like that, and you can look at them. But what I would say is if someone was saying, I want to start my own firm, and I'm a trained technical engineer, I would say, first ask yourself the question, do you want to stop being an engineer? Do you want to stop doing technical things? If you don't, then you need to find someone who does, or you're going to be dissatisfied, probably. Second, once you go down that path, then you recognize, okay, I want to do this, and I'm more interested in running the business than maybe doing the technical things. Then I would say use those associations and those councils and company and organizations, which will help you to understand the business side of it. I think ACEC puts out a little quadrant thing where there's a business-centered business, and then a business-centered practice, and a practice-centered business, and a practice-centered practice. And I did that all with just my hands, so that could be confusing. But it's the difference between, am I going to just work on this project because it's cool and I don't care if I really make money, which is a practice-centered practice, like I just care about the engineering. I just want to do that, versus a business-centered business, which is, hey, this person, they haven't met their utilization goals. Boom, we're going to cut 10% of our staff regardless of what's going on because it helps our bottom line, which is a business type of decision. And I think sometimes engineers can get caught. They want to be in charge at the business because people like to be in charge. They like to move up in management, but they're not ready to make business decisions. They still want to do engineering and be focused more on that than on running the business. And that's, each person gets to decide. I'm not saying that a practice-centered practice is a bad thing. You just need to understand the finances of what you're doing. You're not going to be as profitable if you're doing that because you're probably going to lose money here and different things like that. So I would just say be aware of what you really want to do if you're going to make that decision. Do you want to kind of move away from the engineering? And then if you're going to, then get help within the industry to help you.
Kevin, I would add to that. What you've revealed there is kind of I don't know, call it a character flaw. Maybe that a lot of engineers have. It's like, hey, I'm an engineer. I can do some hard things, right? I'm technically competent. This business side of the thing, that can't be that hard. I can do that,
Right.
It's not always true. If you don't have a feel for the space that you're working in, the business side of that space, at the end of the day, what you're offering is a service to people that have that need, and the ability to market that service and then manage the cash flows, the human resource side of things. More of those I don't know, intangibles, those soft skills side of engineering, that can be a big deal. That can come up and bite you, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
sure.
yeah, and I would think most engineers would think they were maybe above some of that stuff until they're up to their eyeballs in it, and not doing very well.
Right. Right.
Right.
And the nice thing about, professional engineer is a licensed engineer. They can be a business unto themselves, but there's a lot of complication and nuance to that, especially, Isaac, as you asked the question. It depends too. Do you want to start a business on your own and that's all? You're just going to be yourself? Well, that's one level of complication and sophistication. Are you going to hire employees? Are you going to have multiple offices? How big are you going to get? And how are you going to handle ownership? We're currently, as I mentioned earlier, we have 9 owners, and there's always, you have to be aware of ownership transition at all times, because you don't know if somebody's going to move on to a different job, and this would be somebody in your leadership, your ownership, or if they're going to maybe leave for a service period of some kind, a religious reason to be away for a little while, or lots of different things that could happen. And so you also have the end of work life. When is somebody going to retire? And you have to balance and weigh all of those things. So as you start down that path, I think it's a little bit one of those situations. You need to start with the end in mind. What does this look like at the end of my process? And do I want to go through that? And to Mark's point, there is a lot of nuance and a lot of complication there. And I do think that generally engineers, they are very smart people and think, I can figure this out. It's going to be great. I might agree everything's fine. But there are things that can jump up and get you and can make it either not fun experience or even unprofitable experience, and you can find yourself in the hole if you're not careful.
Yep. Makes sense. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer, Kevin. Thanks for jumping on and share us your thoughts on all things running a firm. So appreciate you doing this with me.
You bet. Thanks. It's been fun. I appreciate it. I hope it'll be good. And you mentioned earlier, maybe we can do it again. I'm happy to keep talking through things and answering questions. So
yeah. And before we go, make sure you throw a shout out to your website and who you are, so people, if they are interested, can contact you, even if you've got openings. So anything like
you bet. Yeah, you can find us at fransoncivil.com, FRANSONCIVIL.com. There's a contact us page there that would send me an email. So if anybody sees this and says, hey, I'd like to work there, and the website has lots of indications of our projects, what we do, what kind of projects we do, our clients, who we work for. So if that's a fit for you, yeah, reach out to me. Let me know you found us here on the podcast, and make it for me. That'd be great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kevin. We'll talk to you later.
You bet. Thanks. Bye, Mark. Bye, Isaac.
Yeah. See ya.